Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, what I'm about ready to talk about isn't some earth-shattering news. Each and every one of you who have been through the legal system in one way, shape, form, or the other know what I'm talking about. But there is an acceptance by our society and by our taxpayers that should not be. Every single citizen of the United States, every taxpayer of the United States ought to join with me and Bulldog Nation in our daily cause of fighting for justice for the little guy. And what is justice? Justice is fairness, but justice is also timeliness. It's so important. One of the prime ministers of Great Britain back in the day, I think it was the 1800s, William Gladstone, famously said, "Justice delayed is justice denied." The Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court herself, Maureen O'Connor, referenced this in an article once, which I have taken and reminded her. We even put it on the front of the black t-shirt that I was wearing when I was let off for contempt for holding a protest for the Durrani victims not getting their trial. Ohio has a rule that you have to have your case resolved from beginning to end. It used to be 2 years. If it was complicated, 3 years, but it's 3 years. It's called the Ohio Rules of Superintendents, adopted by the Ohio Supreme Court. But they don't follow it. They don't enforce it. Messed up. Kentucky does not have such a rule, but Kentucky, the system goes as the litigants push it. In other words, the litigants have to contact the court and say, yeah, we're ready for a trial. Now, the Sixth Amendment gives every American the right to a speedy trial. And if you're a criminal defendant, you can waive that right if you want. And if that right is waived, you can take your time. But it's a right that only the criminal defendant can waive. There is something called the Seventh Amendment that says you have a right to a civil jury trial if the dispute is over $20. Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, you have a right to a civil jury trial for civil disputes in this country. Doesn't it make absolute sense that that means that you are entitled to that in a rational period of time? There's case law out there that says yes. We actually filed a federal case to say, hey, this is the way it's got to be, and they just punted it. Said, it's a state issue. Federal courts are supposed to intervene when states don't follow the law. That's the way it works. But ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, I've heard stories about divorces taking 4 or 5 freaking years. That's nuts. There has to be swift, when I say swift, I'm talking about rational time period. Now, I always say this. When you try a medical malpractice case and you're claiming the doctor did something wrong, doesn't it behoove you to say what should have happened? Of course, if I'm on the jury and somebody's complaining what a doctor does, I want to hear, okay, well, you're saying he screwed up. What should have happened? So I'm here to tell you what should happen. First and foremost, there is no substitute for electing hard-working judges. There just is no substitute for it. Some judges work harder than others. Do you realize that people don't realize this about politics in the swamps? Do you realize that when you elect a state, county, or federal official, they can't get fired until another election? They're not like all of you that work at a job that could be fired if you screw up. Think about it. People forget that. I'm being Captain Obvious here, but people forget that. You can't be fired until another election. You don't think that goes to these people's heads? Remember what Lord Acton said. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Federal judges are appointed for life. There's only been like 2 removed, impeached for misconduct. Think about that. Federal judges, sit back. There's no substitute for a hard worker and someone who cares. Here's something else. There are situations, locations, where there does need to be more judges, more funding, because the docket is great. I know this. Tony Frolick had the whole Boone Circuit Court docket for a while. He's retired now, to himself. He worked hard, thank God. But I can't believe it. Kenton County had 4 circuit judges. He was out there in Boone County, a little smaller county, all by himself. There's 2 now. Ladies and gentlemen, the American Jury and Bulldog Nation, in Kentucky, if they ask for more funding for courts, it's in your best interest to support that. There needs to be funding to where we have courts. And they've done some things like creating the domestic relations docket where you have a judge that only handles divorce. That's a good thing. But there should be funding. But let me tell you something else. The appeal process needs to be sped up. In Kentucky and Ohio, you both have this right. An automatic appeal to the Court of Appeals, then a request to the Supreme Court. That process takes years. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. And here's why it's so important. If you're an aggrieved party, let's say you're a plaintiff that's injured, you should have a trial, and the appeal process shouldn't allow you to be put off for years till you get your just award. But here's another little known fact. Do you know where most of the lawsuits come from? The insurance industry doesn't want you to know this. It comes from businesses suing businesses. It's a fact. Businesses sue businesses more than any other type of lawsuit. It's true. They're suing each other. Now, I got to ask you this question. If you're a small business and you got a contract with a larger business and your whole livelihood is dependent upon that contract, and the big business says, too bad, we're not paying you, and you got to sue for that, what does it do to your business if that takes you a decade to go through the system? See what I'm talking about? That happens, folks. There are people who go down the tubes because justice is so slow, and it shouldn't be. Every judge, every citizen, every taxpayer, every politician ought to be tuned in that we need swifter justice in this country across the board. Now, this is funny. I don't know about you, but do you not get great ideas in the bathroom? I'm not talking about just sitting on the can. I'm talking about brushing my teeth, getting a shower. I get great ideas. Tomorrow, Roger, don't let me forget this. Tomorrow, I am going to use an example of using a particular lawyer and a particular judge and show you how slow and corrupt the system is. I thought about that. I said, man, I forgot about that story. That's a great story. The lawyer and the judge aren't going to like it, but too bad. Ladies and gentlemen, the American Jury and Bulldog Nation, rationality, just reasonable common sense in all things. You know what I say to lawyers and business partners that I do business with? I say this to every single person, employees, partners, people I do business with. I say this to everybody. 2 rational people can always work out their differences. Always. And you might say, well, do you practice that? I absolutely practice. Why, folks? Because some of you might say, well, how come you sued your dad? Because my dad and Jeremy are rational. How can I accept that they try to steal my stock? So don't you say, well, that's not, well, my dad and Jeremy are irrational buffoons, so I can't resolve that. But I'm telling you right now, when you do business with rational people, for example, my wife and I just built a house, Ashley Construction. You build a house, there's going to be stuff that comes up. Not one blip. It was all awesome. Why? They're rational, we're rational. Always remember that. Two rational people can always, it takes only one rational nitwit to cause boom. And sometimes there has to be a boom. I never blame anybody for fighting against irrationality. You have no choice. You have no choice. People getting divorced, two people getting divorced, that ought to be resolved by an agreement. Sometimes two people are not rational, but it only takes one. I feel sorry for you. You better go through a divorce and you got an irrational spouse. It's dumb. Two rational people should always be able to resolve. But folks, that's why we have the court system. When disputes can't be solved, you got to go to court. It's the civil way, right? I used to say this all the time to jurors on voir dire, an opening statement. My client can't go beat the hell out of them. You know, you don't think these Durrani victims would love to go beat and torture Dr. Durrani? Probably, but they can't. They have one route. Lawsuit. Everybody badmouths lawsuit. Thank God we have lawsuits. Sometimes you need a lawsuit. But you know what? Justice delayed is justice denied. This has gone pretty long, but I think you're enjoying it. I've enjoyed it. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. Have a great day.